Hello and welcome to the All-Rounder Performance Podcast with myself, Damian Schechter. I am so happy that you are here with me today, as this is going to be a very special podcast. It's something that I've not done. As you can see, I'm actually sitting here solo today, and the topic for this podcast is going to be very honest, open, authentic in its nature. And basically why I'm doing this is to really just give you an idea of who I am as an individual, some of my experiences that have led me to where I am today, and just give you a little bit of context behind, the man, the head coach, the individual who has dedicated over the past 10 years of his life to helping other people. Now, I don't really have, let's say, a mission behind this podcast, but I really do just want to, I think, share some open and honest experiences of mine that I hope some of you will relate to. And if you have any questions, anything that you want to find out a little bit more after listening to this episode, please feel free to drop me a DM. So what we're going to do is really just talk from the beginning. And I'm going to go back before I actually entered the online space, before I even entered the personal training space. And the reason why I want to do this is because I think a lot of people just know me over the past, 10 years as the health and fitness professional, which, is my identity. It is what I do every single day. It's what I eat, sleep, and breathe. But I think it is very important to also, remind anyone that does watch, from outside, that I'm a human being. And that, I've also got my own experiences, just like many of you, that has shaped who I am today. So let's go back. Let's go back to, we could start when I was, born essentially, but I think let's go to like a very realistic time frame as to, when this all actually started and what was my motive, behind getting into what I do today and who I am today. So I think let's start in school. I went to a very good school. I went to private schools. With that came a lot of awesome experiences, a lot of great opportunities, to learn and to be provided with a good education and good people. But I think because of my open and just fun nature, there were a lot of people, and like if I really go back to, the earliest days, let's say like 6, 7, 8, maybe I would say 8, 9. I went to a school where there were lots of other privileged kids, and I don't know how they grew up, but it did lead to a huge amount of bullying. And I don't look at certain things, such as being called gay or, being pushed around as like something that, has really affected me as an adult. But, it was definitely something that I kept secret, I kept private. I didn't really enjoy doing any team sports, and at the same time, I hung around girls a lot. I collected stickers as an 8-year-old, so definitely wasn't the masculine type of kid. Not that I think, any kids really identify they're masculine or they're feminine or anything of that matter. So yeah, growing up I was a little bit, I wouldn't say confused. I definitely knew, let's say, what my preference was, or that I was attracted to girls. But I think, when other kids are seeing that, they either are intimidated or they really want to say mean things, say nasty things. And so anyways, kind of growing up with that being, quite a constant thing in my life. Obviously then going into middle school, same thing, I hung around lots of girls. I enjoyed their company. And that meant that I also then got bullied a lot by the older kids. At the same time, I did drama. So I don't think that helped a lot. I was very expressive, very emotive, was very happy to take on roles and have fun with it. But that obviously, I think, just also perpetuated a lot of maybe the kids that were older than me were insecure. I don't know. But I definitely did get bullied quite a bit as well, middle school and maybe a little bit of high school. Anyways, one of the ways that I decided to break the mold And this was, due to my father. He had been bodybuilding for most of his life. I had grown up, my entire childhood seeing my dad be this strong individual who, he got up every single morning, nice and early. He made his oats, he had his creatine, and he would go to the gym. And so I kind of correlated that behavior with obviously what he looked like and, kind of the image that he portrayed. And I knew that also, having been around him for so long, when he was around other people, that he was respected, that there was, I don't want to use the word fear, but there definitely was, whoa, Harvey is a tough dude. Harvey is a big guy. And that's my dad's name. And, I kind of felt that after all the years of, bullying, inverted commas, or being made to feel small, that, that was an outlet for me. That was a way that I could gain respect. That was a way that I could, build my confidence and my, character to handle the bullying. And, I don't know if I'm really phrasing it correctly, but this was really just a way that I could become more than what I was told I was and who I was. And so I had a really good Christmas dinner with my dad once, and it was actually, I think, at about 16 years old. And I remember this conversation so clearly. It was, I think, like maybe 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve. And just before the roast was coming out, just before, we were all going to sit down, I was sitting outside on the patio with my dad. And after, I think it was my first double vodka Red Bull, I said to my dad, "Dad, I want you to take me to the gym. I want you to teach me everything that you know. I want to be bigger, I want to be better, I want to be stronger." And as a son, to say that to his dad, I know that it made my dad extremely proud, because I know that it was his biggest passion. It was his biggest distraction. And it was also, I think his greatest outlet. I won't go into too much context of what my dad did for a living, but it definitely put a lot of stress on him. And I think, he needed to, have an outlet for that. So, yeah, basically at 16, my dad took me into the gym, and it was a matter of weeks before my dad decided to actually take me for my first shot of Decadurablin, which for anyone listening who doesn't know, that's an anabolic steroid. So from the ages of about 16, obviously I'm still in school, I started using steroids. And yeah, it was a good time. Well, it wasn't a good time, but it was an interesting time as a young man to all of a sudden, be taking something that really genetically just changed how I looked, how I felt, how I performed. And, having come from years of just not having that strong self-identity and that in control self-identity and having something to look forward to all of a sudden, just going into the gym and taking something and all of a sudden blowing up. And I was under this impression that, that was the way forward. And that's because my dad obviously had been using anabolics for a long time. And that was his first suggestion. I said, "Hey, let's go for creatine." And we were like, "Nope, we're not doing creatine. We are doing steroids." So, yeah, it was a very interesting time. Obviously, I saw major changes in my body. And so that led me down a path of, I would say, about 5 years worth of steroid usage. And do I resent it? Not at all. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Do I think it is the healthiest option and it's something that I would suggest someone else to do? With that insight and hindsight now, definitely not. I don't think that anabolics in any way, shape, or form should be used. I think there's a lot, especially with my knowledge and expertise, I don't think, that it is necessary. If you get certain fundamentals of your life in terms of sleep, hydration, your training being progressively overloaded, your nutrition, not just being a macro-based, but nutrient-dense based, I think if there's a really good, well-catered approach to growth, that you don't need things like that. Obviously, supplementation does help, but I don't think at the ages of 16 to 25 should anyone be using any hormone replacement therapies or testosterone replacement therapies. So anyways, just back to the story is, 16 I started taking steroids. And this went from Decker, Winstrol, Sustanen, Anavar, Klen. The list goes on, and there were times where I was doing all of it together. There were times where I was just running a Sustanen 250 on its own. So, anyways, long story short, I got fucking massive, and it was a very interesting time. But let's fast forward now to, I would say about 2021. Between finishing school at 18, so obviously just backtracking there, I was obviously on steroids while I was attending high school, and this is where I also got made fun of for now all of a sudden not being the small skinny kid, but all of a sudden having bigger arms, bigger chest, and it happened within such a small time frame that a lot of the older kids also started to make fun of me there. A lot of people in my class, started to question how big I got. Even one or two of the guys in my class actually got inspired and started using anabolics as well. That also didn't, I think, really help in terms of, my acceptance of who I was. So, all of this is external. Obviously, we're looking at big biceps, we're looking at strength, we're looking at all of these subjective and objective, parts of who I was, progressing in one area. But, at that age, you're also not really, how do I say it, learning about yourself. You're so influenced by everything that's going on around you, and certain influences, be this friends, this was now going out, this was not just taking steroids, but experimenting with drugs. So experimenting with cocaine, with MDMA, with things like butane, poppers, drinking excessive amounts on the weekends. This is while I'm in school. So, I don't want to say that I had an addictive nature, but I was very easily influenced. And I think this went on for quite a few years. But if we're just going to go back to, the story, how it correlates to the health and fitness side of things, at about 20 years old, I was actually out drinking with a friend of mine. And we were speaking about competitions, and we were speaking about bodybuilding. And I remember this conversation so clearly. We were sitting at the Shack in Cape Town, and we were speaking about competitions, and I said, dude, what do you think about me potentially doing a bodybuilding show? And he said, bro, you know what, you're obviously in good shape, but you've got nothing on these guys that have been doing this for years and years and years. And that kind of put me down a bit. This was something that I went into that conversation really actually thinking, wow, this is something that I could be good at. And even a friend of mine to just say, I don't think you're cut out for that. I could have let that demotivate me, or that could have inspired me. And I think at a time in my life where I had not really had any personal success or achievement, I'd obviously been working, throughout. I had a food catering business that was, preparing grilled food at events. We had the trailer, we had the grills, we had everything that was, really catered towards preparing healthy food, and this was called Smileys, actually. And I actually came up with that idea while I was super stoned, rolling a joint, and the name of the papers that I was using was Smileys. So I was like, whoa, wait, this is a great business idea. Anyways, long story short, did that for about 6 months, which was quite fun, quite interesting, had a good time, learned a lot about business and being a small business owner, but I just knew that that wasn't for me. I knew that the one thing that I had been doing for 4 or 5 years already was training, and I knew that that was my passion, and I knew that that was something that I loved doing. When I went into the gym, I felt good about myself. So I decided in the interim to compete in a bodybuilding show. So I'd prepped, I'd gotten some really good guidance from people that had my best interests. They trained me really hard. I trained myself very hard. Obviously, I trained a lot with my dad as well, and there was definitely anabolics and steroids used throughout that process. But long story short, I got on stage I think it was 2013, Mr. and Mrs. Fitness South Africa, and I had won. I went up against legends in the health and fitness industry, and bodybuilding community. And these were guys that I really respected, admired. These were brand ambassadors of some of the best supplement companies in South Africa. I came in there as a novice, as somebody who had never competed. and I won the lineup, the Mr. Physique under 178. No, over 178, sorry. So the taller class. And, what I would say I won that based on was not my physique. I would definitely say it was more my stage presence, my pizzazz. I was known as the mover and the shaker. And that was the drama side of me coming out, right? That was the high school drama student who had been on stage, who was excited to be on stage, who was excited for people to applaud for him. I don't want to say it's the egoic Damian, but it was definitely the person who loved validation. And I think that's also got a lot to do with why I got into bodybuilding. Was that, because I had never really achieved anything when it came to academics, I wasn't a high performer. The second that I had the opportunity to, have people stand up and clap for me, that gave me energy. That really, allowed me to inspire and motivate myself. So I got on that stage and I just fucking loved it. And so, that set off a bit of a chain of competing events. So, I did another show a few weeks after that, and I won that show. I went up to different provinces and competed there and placed in the top 3. I had a really good streak, and, in the midst of, this 3-year period, 4-year period where I was training very hard and I was competing, at the same time I had really good endorsements with food prep companies and with clothing brands that, represented the South African market when it came to, fitness ambassadors. And, supplement companies, USN, Nutritech, really there was a lot that came my way as a byproduct of me doing what I loved. And so, through that, I really, I understood what I loved, and that was being in the gym. And at the same time, I decided to, add a little bit of expertise and knowledge to that, and that was to study personal training. Now, I didn't just study personal training. I did pre and postnatal, so working with pregnant women. I did nutrition. I did working with the elderly. I did sports massage, and I actually became a sports masseuse for about 8 months to a year, I think. That was also very exciting. That gave me a great understanding of the body. And so throughout this entire, bodybuilding and competing journey, at the same time, obviously, studying, I really understood what my passion was. And that was, to help people, inspire people, to motivate people, and to really bring out the best of other people. Now, there's probably a few people out there that are listening to this that are also thinking, yeah, but dude, you were on steroids. It was, let's say, a false image, or it was, you saying that you want people to have better health and, longevity when it comes to health and fitness. But, here you are doing something that doesn't align with those values and doesn't align with those beliefs that you say that you have. And so I think this also led to a secretive high amount of imposter syndrome. Even though I had a lot of credibility within the bodybuilding community, at least, and as a personal trainer, I just felt that I wasn't being true. And I kept this to myself for a very long time. And, it was only up until maybe about 3 years ago, that I really started to actually be open and honest about, my steroid usage. Now, do I think that I had a lifelong addiction to it? Did I have an addiction at any point? No. But, I kind of justified it as, this is what you need to do in order to be great. And then there were a lot of times where I would see other personal trainers that would, say what results they could deliver to clients and, speak about how credible they are, but they didn't look like they could deliver results. And here's me, high and mighty, obviously thinking, well, I've got this credibility, I've got this excellent body, I'm better. And so, this is where I really do want to, kind of come at this podcast and this episode with a full amount of honesty and transparency. I know that I didn't get it right. I know that, it was a phase that I needed to go through. It was something that I needed to go through for myself to understand my values, my beliefs, what I was okay with, what were my boundaries, essentially. And at the age of 21, when I started competing, I got into a long-term relationship. And the intentions were there to have a good relationship, but I think the steroids, the ego, the yeah, I need to obviously just kind of think about this while I'm also saying it. Um, there was a lot that I know that I brought to the relationship that was not healthy. Most people love to deflect and love to say, well, my ex was crazy, and she made me act out. That's 50% of a story generally, but, with every relationship, I know that I was 50%. And that also took me a while to definitely, accept. And I know that the steroids, the validation that I was getting from others, the way that, smoke was essentially being blown up my ass from myself and other people, it definitely affected my character and who I was, and who I thought I was at least, and who I had the nerve to be, in some instances. There was a huge level of aggression that started to come out, and I put my hand up and deeply apologize to anyone that was affected by my attitude, and I really do apologize to anyone that I hurt, that I disrespected, because looking back on it now, I was in a very different place. And so I got into this relationship, and it turned, I don't want to say abusive, but I would never ever I think lay my hands on someone or purposefully hurt someone. I think it was more on a verbal and an emotionally manipulative level where I hurt someone. And this was not just toxic for that person, but this was also very toxic for myself. And I found myself becoming someone that inherently my parents didn't raise me to be. Shout out to my mom and my dad for doing the best job that they could. I've got the highest amount of love and respect for my family and for my friends. But I think a lot of my family and my friends will vouch that, that period in my life turned me into a different person and a different individual. So, yeah, basically what happened was I did my last bodybuilding show in 2015 or 2016, I think it was. Yeah, 2016. And that was Body Power, and I had won that lineup. And I think after that, I really realized, and this was actually also the same year, that I had finally understood that the way that I was living and the level of negative energy that I was carrying around when it came to, how I treated other people and how I essentially neglected loving myself, I think that's where it started to make a little bit of sense. That I needed to just pull back on substance abuse, and steroid abuse, or let's say substance abuse comes in many forms, that being steroid abuse. So yeah, 2016 was the last time that I had used any anabolics, any injectables, any pills, any of that. So yeah, 2016 came, and that was also the year where I realized that everything that I'd been doing for the past couple of years, I just didn't want it anymore. I enjoyed personal training. I enjoyed connecting with people. I enjoyed building rapport with people and really, having a one-on-one, deep connected relationship with my clients. And I think that also made me realize that I needed to have a more deep connected relationship with myself and with my friends and my family. So that's when I finally hung up the gloves and I said, you know what, I'm done with bodybuilding. And it was a great time and I really enjoyed that. But my love for bodybuilding and training didn't stop. So I continued to train. I became a little bit more athletic. I started doing a little bit more running, a little bit more aerobic and endurance, based work. And at the same time, I realized that everything I'd done when it came to representing supplement brands, clothing brands, just I wanted to leave a lot of that behind. At the same time, I broke up with my girlfriend of 4 years. So 21 to 25, 26, that was that relationship. And when I gave up bodybuilding and I gave up a lot of the brand representation, I also actually wanted a completely new slate and lease on life. And so that's actually when, I also became single. So because I had really put a lot of boundaries and measures on a lifestyle, that came to socializing, to having a few drinks, to eating out, I hadn't really, taken full advantage of that for the past couple of years. Training and bodybuilding was my priority. So, after I gave up bodybuilding, and broke up with my girlfriend at the time, that's when I went balls to the walls. I did everything that I hadn't been doing. So I started to drink a lot. I think on average was probably a bottle of wine, red wine, every single night of the week. And then on the weekends came and it was just like, fuck, let's go balls to the walls. Let's really just mix a little bit of cocaine with that, a little bit of brandy, a little bit of tequila, a little bit of red wine. I lost myself when the idea was to find myself. And so this went on for about 8 months. I was on and off dating someone who I think had an alcohol problem, and that didn't perpetuate any better behavior. So yeah, from the beginning of 2018 to I would say about August was a very, very, very challenging time in my life. And at the same time, I still, had to uphold a certain image, with my clients. I was seeing about 10 to 15 clients on some days. I was teaching 1 to 2, classes of about 20 people, 20 to 30 people on some days. So energy expenditure when it came to my work was at an all-time high. I was stressed. At the same time, my outlet was finishing work at 8 o'clock in the evening and going and getting fucked until 11 o'clock at night, maybe even sometimes 12 or 1, and then having to wake up at 5 the next morning. And this went on for about 8 months. And no one knew what was going on behind closed doors. I kept it very well hidden, I think. There were definitely a few people in my circle that could see something was wrong, but, Damien assures you everything is going to be fine. And so what happened was my dad died. And that was, I think, the turning point where things went from really bad to unimaginably worse. And I think I've come to terms with a lot of it. I definitely think that I've accepted his death a lot, but I think at the time I thought, holy fuck, man, I've never experienced death of anyone close to me like that. Obviously some best friends had passed away, but I'd never experienced the death of any family member really until I got a call and someone said your dad's got 6 hours to live, and that kind of fucked with me a bit. But I'm not gonna bring certain family into the story. But long story short was that perpetuated a good 3 months of unbelievable amounts of cocaine, and I kept that fucking well hidden. But it got to a point where I couldn't keep it hidden, and a lot of friends were really worried about me. I had some people that I held in very high regard that were like, dude, the batteries have been taken out of you. There's no character anymore. You just, what the fuck? And so that was, I know that I can say that was my way of coping, but it was actually my way of escaping. And so long story short was obviously now we've had 8 months of drinking, partying, and doing a little bit of drugs here and there to all of a sudden now like really just the wheels have fallen off. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to show up for my work, my clients. At the same time, I'm fucking all over the place. And so this is where, myself and my ex-partner, Tessa, she's an incredible person. I've got stupid amounts of love for her, and I think she is still a very important person to me. And she always was a very important person to me for a good 8 years before we actually finally got together. And so I met up with her one day, and she was the first person to really just sit me down and say, everything's going to be okay. This was really me wanting to meet up with her because I had no one else that I felt I could trust that would listen to me. And so, she held my hand and said, everything will be okay. And everything was okay. She became a permanent fixture in my life. She was my best friend. She really just brought out the better side of me. And she said, look, if you die from your behavior and what you're doing, I won't be at your funeral if it's got anything to do with drugs. And so that was my purpose. I'd realized my purpose. And that was to hold myself to a higher standard for her. And so, what happened was we got together, and this is kind of like now that next chapter. So now we're talking end of 2018 going into 2019. And, this really was a good time. I had put myself through so much and so much trauma, and now I accept it. But in the time, I was really like, nope, I've done nothing wrong. This has all been part of my character building. But really, no, man, there was a huge amount of escapism as part of the equation. So, long story short was, we decided to vacate to the Netherlands. I had pretty much had enough of South Africa and a lot of the the negative energies, some of the negative people, the lack in support structure. Obviously, I did have, my mom, my brother, my family, and they, gave me the most unbelievable support and love. But, as a young adult, I needed to explore the world. I needed to really, how do we say this? Like, leave the nest. So myself and Tess, we obviously went overseas to the Netherlands, and that's where she was from. And so I started working for a world-class personal training company called Ultimate Performance. Now, if you don't know Ultimate Performance, in my personal opinion, the framework that they provide to their trainers is second to none. They educate you, they test you, they make sure that you really are who you say you are. And I know that, through the years of experience that I had in the gym, but also having studied, I knew who I said I was when it came to personal training and actually really helping people. So I got the job. I was outsourced. I believe I was hired out of about 250 applicants. Myself and another guy, Matt. We were both hired out of apparently 250 submissions, and that was nice. So when we found that out, it was really nice to just know that we know what we're doing. We were put through certain testing. We were put through, training sessions that we had to do once we arrived in the Netherlands. So you don't actually get the job until you arrive in the Netherlands and you take one of their head trainers for a training session. And after that, then they all sit together and they say, do we give the job to him or not? So I, all of a sudden found myself working for a world-class, highly reputable company, and that was great. So, that lasted a good, I would say, 2 years. What happened was COVID had happened. And, I had to all of a sudden now take everything that I'd learned and apply it to an online framework. Now, at no point in now the past 8 years of personal training had I done any online coaching work. I'd always looked at some of the online coaches and I was like, fuck, man, how do you make so much money when all you're doing is working from a laptop? And so there was a huge amount of resentment almost towards online coaching just because I didn't understand what it entailed and, how was that framework essentially getting results with people from all over the world. I had no idea, how online coaching worked. So I had to go from, standing in the gym and, helping people with their reps and their sets and counting and spotting and really just, being in the physical. And that's all I'd known for about 10 years to all of a sudden sitting behind a computer. And I had to now really try and, understand what the company wanted me to do, but at the same time, match my energy to doing that, but also, having to go over and above in areas that I didn't know how to. I was also taking instruction from management, and anyways, it was a bit of a shit show. Let's just put it like that. And then after about a year of working from home, I then had got, X amount of results, and once you do that, you then get the promotion, and that means you go from a junior to a more senior position. But because I had seen what the opportunity was to work online, how lucrative it was, what you could charge, what you essentially were able to do having never seen a client, it blew my mind. And so when I got that promotion, I actually put up my hand and I said, sorry, I don't want the promotion. I actually want to work from home and I want to explore this a little bit further. So why the all-rounder? Now, during COVID, during this whole online coaching process, I had started studying life coaching. And what I wanted to do with life coaching and, infuse that with the training side of things was really just, have an all-rounded approach, right? So we're not just talking about training, nutrition, sleep, hydration, but we're also talking about understanding the client, understanding the individual, listening to their problems, building rapport with them, building relationships with them. I wanted to have an all-rounded approach when it came to what I did, and how I provided a bespoke service. So that was the birth of the All-Rounder. The All-Rounder coaching systems became now the All-Rounder Athlete Program, so which is under the umbrella of the All-Rounder Lifestyle Consultants, FZ LLC. So we're currently registered now in Dubai. But I really wanted to not just do things on a training and nutrition perspective, but really have good relationships with people and understand their problems and listen to their problems. So that's what happened. Was I took the pay. I took the pay once I resigned. I also then got some holiday pay from the Dutch government. So I really had a little bit of runway to focus on building a brand. And at the same time, I had no idea about marketing. I wasn't allowed to do any marketing when I worked for the company. I didn't have my own system. I was working on the company's system. I didn't have any way of tracking client results. That was all, IP of the company I worked for. So I really had to start scratch and learn a new set of skills. So this is where I needed to essentially practice what I preach. And I put my hand up and I inquired about having a coach, which was hands down the greatest thing I could have ever done. So Ollie Carson, a shout out to him. He was my first coach. He was my first, mentor, as you will, in terms of really building a reputable online fitness coaching brand. So, this was the start of something amazing. I started taking clients on for free. I also then started taking clients on for absolutely fuck all when it came to what I was charging, just to build a lot of build a lot of client success stories and testimonials and results, and it was a flying success. It was really something that I was very, very proud of. And just going back to my relationship with Tess, she was obviously very supportive of this. She was always saying, you've got so much potential to do more and do more for yourself, and give yourself that recognition, that I think that you should do this. And so she was a huge factor in pushing me to do this. And so, huge amounts of respect for her for really believing in me. She believed in me since day one, since we met 10 years ago. And I think that was always something that I really admired and appreciated about her. So, this is what happened was, went online, and now living in the Netherlands, we moved into Amsterdam city center. I've got this online business that I'm building. I've, really built a great amount of rapport with clients, and some of these clients I'm still working with today. And so I think because I saw what the potential was, I also felt that I needed to put in a unparalleled amount of time into this. And obviously now, coming from personal training where your hours are, let's say 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., then you have a break, then let's say 2 to 7 p.m., and then you're done for the day. Whereas being now a business owner and having to wear all these many hats, the marketing, the sales, the invoices, the follow-ups, the onboardings, putting all these systems together and really, let's say, building something to be proud of. It took a lot more than just like the 10 hours a day. And so this meant that I was now working at 6 a.m. On a computer. And this also meant that I was working until 10, 11 at night. Throughout the day, I was taking 10 calls and then onboarding 10 clients. And it really meant that I stepped away from everything that I knew. And most importantly, it meant I stepped away from my relationship. But at the time, me and Tess were now obviously, we were engaged. I proposed to her after the first 6 months of us being together, because I truly felt that, she was the one, and my soulmate. And so, getting engaged, then going to the Netherlands, working for this company. Now all of a sudden, by the time that I went online, we had a very short amount of time until the wedding. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to deliver and over-deliver when it came to running a business. The financial success was unbelievable. I'd never experienced that amount of money in my life. But this was where I started to miss the mark in terms of the time, effort, love, commitment, energy that I gave to my partner. And I think it's very important, if there is any coach out there that's listening to this, that don't ever, 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 ever forget about the relationships that you have with people when it comes to, trying to build a business. Because businesses could fail or they could thrive. but you don't want that to happen with your relationship. And, I'm very grateful for kind of where this whole journey has now led me. Essentially, sitting in a studio in Bali, recording this podcast from a place of honesty, authenticity, and experience. But things could have been very different if I just, had maybe listened to my partner when they were saying, "Hey, you're working a little bit too much. Hey, you are, you're giving more time, effort, and energy to other people, and I just want you to remember me and remember, that I'm also a part of your journey." And that's what I didn't do. I didn't listen. We had these conversations. We were obviously very honest and open about, the amount of time that I was spending on building a business. But, it just, it kind of fizzled out. We kind of became living past each other, if I can just put it like that. I don't want to say housemates. There was still a very deep connection. But yeah, I just want to also respect her and not speak for her. I'm just really saying the things that I hope and think that she'll agree with, and things that I know that we've spoken about. And, maybe the story isn't really appropriate to be sharing. So that's why I'm just really trying to keep it to cherry picking the important parts. But long story short is, yeah, we moved to Portugal, and this was when business was going pretty well. We had just had the wedding. So everything that I'd worked for and saved towards was now obviously, kind of gone towards the wedding. And it was incredible. We had such a fucking unbelievable celebration with awesome friends and family. But then we went back overseas and we went to Portugal. And I think that's where we just realized that, I had maybe missed the mark in some areas. And I do put my hand up, and I do definitely take responsibility for that. But yeah, I think that's where I just want to leave that side of the story, because there's really not much else to layer on a breakup. There's still lots of love there. There's still a lot of respect, and I don't want anyone to think that anything happened. No one lied, no one cheated, no one stole. It was really just, I think, a combination of things that came from both sides. But I don't want to speak for someone else. But from my end, I know that I definitely could have done a little bit more, a little bit better. But things happen for a reason. So basically, what then happened was I found myself in Portugal alone with the dog, and I really needed to do a little bit of deep work. I needed to do some heavy lifting. And at the same time, business was going great, but I felt that over the past couple of years, and this also, includes the bodybuilding side of things, I had really not put any time, effort, love, energy towards myself, right? I'd spent so much time building this career and this brand and something that I felt professionally I could be proud of, that anything spiritual, emotional, had just been put in the back seat. I didn't focus on anything other than just move, just, train harder and train with more intensity and build a business. And I did not have any reflection time. Let's just put it like that. So I felt that I did need to pull back. I did need to definitely give a little bit more of that effort and love towards myself. And so that's where I purposefully stopped onboarding clients. I looked at things more from a maintenance perspective. And I think that was a really good conscious move from myself to do that. Because I was heading into burnout, if I can really put it like that. And I'd experienced burnout in 2018, obviously, when I had, been working so much, but also substance abuse. I definitely experienced burnout then, but this was a different type of burnout, where this was a sober burnout, right? This was really just work, and never rest. And so I decided to pull back on, excess amounts of marketing, and I was really just happy to focus on myself for a bit. Obviously taking on clients, but focusing it more on a referral-based system instead of like, guys, please come work with me. It was really just focus on the people that I'm doing a good job with at the moment and let them be my marketing. And I started to prep for half marathon, full marathon, an Ironman. I had learned how to scuba dive, and I spent a lot of hours in the water. At the same time, I did want to level up the business, but in a way that I had always dreamed about. So I decided to inquire about moving the business and registering it in Dubai. And obviously then doing that, I got residency in Dubai. So beginning of 2023, this year, I moved up to Dubai. And that was a really great experience. I connected with some incredible individuals. And I think let's spend a bit of time on that, because this was now a huge level up that I'd always dreamed of, right? What personal trainer, what coach that spends any amount of time on Instagram and sees people living their best lives, right? What an unbelievable experience that would be, right? To jet ski on the Palm and, go and look at the Burj Khalifa and, have access to world-class training facilities. There was so much to look forward to in Dubai. And I think for me, the biggest motivating part of it was that I was going to connect with like-minded individuals. I'd been in Amsterdam almost alone with Tess. I'd moved to Portugal and was very alone there when it came to having people that did the same thing that I did, and I could really bounce off of them from an energy and a professional perspective. So that was what really attracted me to go to Dubai. And so I get there, and all of a sudden, these guys that I was following on Instagram are now my friends. They're my training partners. They're guys that I've had the utmost amount of respect for, and I was just fucking blown away at how my life had just changed by conscious design. I was fitter, I was healthier, I was stronger. When a breakup happens, you really have this option, right, and this choice to make. Do I go back to previous old patterns and behaviors that were very uncomfortable, or do I develop new and healthy ones that are more, catered towards a healthy and successful lifestyle? And I sat with that quite a bit. And I won't lie, when Tess left, there were a few days where I did kind of like lose the plot a little bit. And this is not from a substance abuse perspective. This was really just being very down, very out, and feeling like I'd lost my purpose. So I had a choice to make, and I decided growth was what I wanted to do. But, there still is a part of me that, I had not done any of the spiritual work and understanding myself and who I was. So I get to Dubai and everything is great. I've got a great apartment. I'm now, training for the Ironman. The amenities are great. The gym that I'm training at's got friendly people and people that, really bring out the best in me. The food that I was eating was super healthy, and I was really in a good structure and routine. And I'm going to skip out the trip to South Africa because I just feel like that there's not really much, that came from that other than in that time I started dating someone briefly, very briefly. And I came back from South Africa and it just didn't end up working out. And I think we both kind of knew it wasn't really going to go anywhere, especially because my life was situated in a different part of the world. And so when I kind of acknowledged and accepted that didn't work out, I was, alone in Dubai. Obviously, a lot of my friends are working and I'm working, but, it can be a very segregated, separate place in terms of, constantly being surrounded by people. Like, people are working, people are, doing their own thing. And so I found myself feeling very alone. And at the same time, obviously, having just come back from South Africa, and now, I was with friends and family and being very social, to now just, being on the beach by myself in Dubai, or going and training by myself, or being at home working by myself. I just felt very lost. And I was sitting on the beach one day, and I'll never forget this moment, is that I was there alone. I just kind of accepted that, someone that I was interested in, it just wasn't going to go anywhere. And I felt like I'd put a little bit of time, effort, and energy into that as well. And so if I just looked at things from what's happened over the past year, I just felt weren't working out for me. And so I felt very, very fucking lost. And I knew something needed to change. And I knew that something needed to change today. So what I did was I booked a flight to Bali for 3 hours later. I called my best friend Francois and I said to him, dude, let's pack a bag and I need you to drop me at the airport, and I need a little bit of space and time to breathe. I don't really know who the fuck I am right now. And that's because I had looked for so much external validation for so many years. I had no idea who I really was. And at 30 years old, I was so grateful to have that experience, because some people live their entire lives, lacking that self-identity awareness. And for me, I just wanted to actually tackle it head on. So I'd never been to Bali. I'd heard great things about it. It was something that I know myself and Tess wanted to do. And so I got on a plane, and yeah, all of a sudden, 24 hours later, I was in Seminyak. And the 2 weeks that I had experienced here really opened my eyes in a way that I'd never experienced in my whole life. Just people in Bali that don't have much were happier than any person I'd ever met in my entire life. And here I was chasing the green mamba. I was chasing the business. I was chasing status, Dubai and having this and that, and having the triathlon bike, and flying all over the world to go and experience new things, and go and do the marathon in Lisbon, and go and do the Ironman in Andorra. And I'd just been all over the place that I had just not experienced people that don't have much, but they were happier than me. And so, within that 2 weeks, I went to an island while I was here, and I took some mushrooms, and I just sat there and I watched the sunset go down, and I just had this moment of like spiritual enlightenment. And when people spoke to me about spiritual enlightenment, I had no fucking idea what they were talking about. But I had experienced this moment, and I'm like, whoa, there's another universe out there that's speaking to me, and that universe is just telling me right now, dude, relinquish all of that self-control, all of that, all that pressure that you're putting on yourself to overachieve and over-deliver, and to be this and to be that, and to impress other people. Just surrender and accept that you're a human being. And I believe in being a human being with higher standards. But I'd never had that moment where there was a voice within me that was just saying, it's okay. It's okay to have gone through the trauma that you've gone through. It's also okay to have felt confused. It's also okay for you to not really know who you inherently actually are. And I did a lot of work last year.